In this video, we're going to talk about the midline. If you're wondering how does the graph assign, where does it come from, look at the last video. And we went ahead and looked at how the unit circle gets mapped onto the graph there. I mean, I briefly mentioned it. But the midline, another really simple one to look at. So I have here sine of x plus m. I'm going to say for the midline, but actually let's just call it d. That's what they're calling it in the in this formula here. So a trig function, sine or cosine, bx minus c, and then plus d. We're looking at this number on the outside, and that's what's going to affect our midline. Because check this out. If I drag this down, it lowers it. If I raise it up, it raises it. So if I put it right at 0, we're right there on the x-axis like it normally would. So let me put the equation y equals d. And what we're going to see here is that's going to be the midline, that purple line there. So if I increase this, you can see the midline, which is right in the middle between the maximum and minimum. That's where the midline is. So whatever number here is on the outside, that's going to be our midline. So pretty simple to calculate that. So in this case, here's D. It's 4. So our midline would be 4. So we know this graph's going to have an amplitude of 3. And remember, the amplitude is how high up we go from the midline. So if I was going to graph this, I know my midline is 4, so it's going to be up 4. So I shift the sine graph up 4. But then what's going to happen when we put that 3 in front, as you can see, we're going to have a distance from that midline. We're going to go up 3, and also from the midline down to the minimum is 3. So up from the midline, 3 up from the midline would be our maximum, 3 down from the midline would be our minimum. So we could figure that out all from looking just at the amplitude of the midline. Of course, this assignment, we're just focused on the midline. I just wanted to make a point of that. Right here, midline, minus 7. So y equals negative 7. You'll realize that negative just flips the cosine upside down. Normally cosine starts at 1, right? So it'd start at negative 1 instead and go backwards. That's what that negative will do. Here our midline's negative 9. And then last, this one doesn't have a midline. It's just, there's nothing outside of it that we're adding, so it's just going to be 0. So realize the midline is the number that's on the outside there that's being added or subtracted.